Hey y'all, I'm Niccara.
And I'm Brandon.
And welcome to another episode of ... But Make It Books.
A podcast where we are bookishly healing through life. Yeah. That. How are you today, Miss Nicole?
Stressed. Very stressed. I just had my engagement party, which was litty. There were a lot of dead bodies, and for what folks don't know about that, it's like we didn't have like a Charles Manson situation. No, that's not what happened. It was like Ted Bundy popped out of a cake. It was more so like, we had an open bar and people enjoyed themselves. Yeah. And we love that for the girls and the gals and everyone and the folks. So we love that. But now I'm stressed and like really getting back to like work and like, getting back to the podcast, which I enjoy. So, but the word today is peace. I will get peace. How are you?
We're choosing peace or we will receive peace.
We choose peace or I'm going to have violence.
Word.
Yes.
Word.
Okay.
Word,
just a word.
Word. No, yeah.
Okay.
So don't test her.
I'm a killer, but don't push me.
Today I'm feeling more like a human being. I think I went through a couple of days of like existential, what is the point of all this? Why are we here? Yeah. It feels like sometimes the world's a little bleak. Mm-hmm. And so, and it's like I just got caught up in like, not like personal darkness or what have you, but like the darkness of that thought. I spent a lot of time in that area these past couple of days, whether it was like, reading articles about, another actor, like several actors who have passed by choice or otherwise. Yes. Things like we just talked about, like, Lizzo out there now with all that stuff coming up.
I told you we can only stand yourself, Jesus, and Beyonce at this point. Like, my gosh.
And then just, things of like, I'm always thinking about the theater industry and just how, for me, and just like, things in entertainment, just where I want to be and like how that's changing. But more specifically, the attitude towards it, like what is everyone saying about it, right? Not so much about what's happening, right, but what is everybody responding? How is everybody responding to it all? Right. And it just, again, bleak is the word. And I'm just like, where is the light? Where is the healing? Where's the fix, if there is one? How do we get through all this? So I spent, last couple of days, I feel like we're a little dark, and I do feel like it had minor effect on me. But like, I do mean minor because it's like as soon as I went outside, just went for a little walk, I mean, literally night and day. Like, it felt very different. I was like, oh, let me get out of there and not getting that and walking that for too long and just, so it's like I did a lot of processing. And today I feel like I'm fully like in the light today.
I love that. You deserve that.
And trying to, keep on going. I got things to do.
Which, what they say, as much as given, much is required.
Yes, as much is given, as much required. And, it's been a lot of clarity. I think I'm grateful for the gifts and things that have been given because I think it's provided a lot of clarity as well. And with that clarity comes some new actionable steps that I keep telling myself I'll get to it. And it's like I have a timeline in my head, but it's like also time's a construct. I could reach that timeline and then all of a sudden there's a new thing. So it's like constantly telling myself like work towards that when you feel like working towards it versus like waiting until a time and then you'll pick up and expect to just grab the baton and go. No, you're ready to grab it now. So go ahead and grab it now.
I feel like it's a testing season happening right now with with us, I think. Yeah. I think we have faith and now like other things are coming in and maybe that's the test of like testing. Okay, Baltimore. Testing the
Baltimore said yes.
Yes. Preach to the choir. And I think that's what like is happening right now. Like we're getting tested in the way of like we have the faith and the works. Yeah. But when we have that doubt, then Like, that's just the test. Like, everybody else's doubts. Like, we know. Just keep clear-headed, put our blinders on, and stay the course.
And stay the course. Yeah, stay the course. Stay the course.
Yes,
yeah.
Amen, amen,
We'll make
amen, amen. So, we are talking about one of the most fabulous books, I think, of our generation. Is that too strong?
No.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so either. That is now a Hulu project, which is amazing. If you haven't read it or listened to it, I highly suggest it. I would even suggest, before you, we're talking about 1619 Project. I'm sorry, I realized I never even said the name. The 1619 Project by Dr. Nicole Hannah-Jones. And I would even listen to the podcast that predates the book. And that is amazing. Yeah. And I need more.
Yeah.
I know she's probably not going to give us more, but I would like a little bit more.
Yeah.
But this is amazing because it details the entire history of Black enslavement in the United States and how we got to how we got here. And I think it's important because it gives us context about everything, that how this country functions, and also, honestly, how America has been able to maintain superpower status for literal centuries.
Yeah.
And how did we get here, and how are we still here? So I guess the question is,
Lord have mercy.
Yeah, I had to do my little Birdman hands. But Birdman hands a little bit more.
I was about to say, yeah.
Gotta do the suck of the teeth.
Yes.
So we're gonna go on our snowball. I have two questions in my head, but I'm like, which
ask
one?
them both. Who cares?
No, because both are very deep.
I think the whole subject is deep.
It is very deep.
The whole.
Okay.
Book.
We have heard a lot from folks that say, "Can we stop talking about slavery? It's getting old. Can we have another storyline?" 1619 Project.
Sorry, right there. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I know. That is already funny in itself.
Mm-hmm.
We have read 1619 Project, and it starts there. It goes in other places. But what is the counter, or do you have a counter to that argument, question of, like, we keep talking about slavery, we have other things we need to talk about? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's the... in your description of it, you used the word storyline, which, threw up my eyes. There you go. I think that's part of the problem. Mm-hmm. Part of the fatigue is that people treat it like it's a storyline as versus a part of who they are.
Yes.
It's like the fact that you can't come to terms with that simple fact is a big part of why the narratives do continue and need to continue, because you're still holding us back by thinking that we're just something to be written and then therefore fictionalized and then eliminated from the school system or altered within the school system and so forth. So, I mean, that's my counter right there. It's like, if you want to stop hearing the narrative, stop being a part of the problem. And then we'll write something where it's all kumbaya, white, black, Asian, Latino, indigenous, whomever. Then we can write narratives like that and it actually feel authentic and feel like conciliation or, like togetherness. Because right now we feel so disparate because you're looking at me like I'm another part of your main storyline that keeps on showing up as the black guy who does the black thing and we have to deal with it. Yeah. My counter is stop treating me like that. Yeah. So there's my counter. Yeah. And then I'll write a different narrative. Then I'll stop. Well, that's a lie. I'm about to go on a list of lies. I'll never stop writing that narrative. Yeah. I personally I
think we haven't even touched the surface, and I think sometimes we hear from even other people even in our community. It's like, why we always gotta have another slave movie? And I understand it because the view of enslavement is always viewed through oppression, which it is an oppressive system, but it's also about resilience, what you do with that oppression. And I would like to see more stories like that. Like Searching for Soul Food on Hulu is amazing because she discusses how food has been a way of resilience and pathway to freedom, of expressing yourself through that, or like all the rebellions. Like, no, enslaved black people, enslaved Africans were not okay with being enslaved. So that narrative needs to die, because there are tons of slave rebellions, but the only ones we know about are like Nate Turner or, you know, Harriet Tubman. But there were tons of folks who fought against the oppression of slavery. We're talking about centuries, right, of like folks of how we are discussing it. Like, if we want to have a real conversation, we should talk about the history of gynecology and why that is not taught, because the history of gynecology was literally used on enslaved women's bodies. Or the fact that Henrietta Lacks, like, that should be a national hero. Thank God her family is now finally getting the needed reparations, because that's the correct term, reparations, from her using her genes for so long.
Right at Johns Hopkins. That was
right at Johns Hopkins. Like, I know you know all the stories.
We had to read that book in college. That was our that was like our reading, like high school senior that summer reading, and it was usually a book of that capacity, that level. And that was for my year going into VCU.
Yeah. So for us, I mean, the stories in Baltimore was always like, you don't go near Johns Hopkins because you might get you might get picked up and taken, and you won't be seen again. There's stories like that all the time. There's a book I'm even thinking about, When No One Is Watching, by Alyssa Cole.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and literally is talking about that same exact thing. And I'm like, oh, that's a thing in all these major cities. And why is it? Because that must be true. Like, it has always some semblance of truth. And so my counter also to that is, like, enslavement and black resilience should always be taught. And we should never have anybody who has oppressed us tell us that our story is not valid anymore, because they're tired of hearing about it. And then at the same time, of folks who are tired of hearing this narrative, you know, it is your history, and it doesn't make you weak because you are enslaved, or our ancestors were enslaved. It actually speaks of the strength of us, that we were still able to function and have children and have families and create community in an oppressive system. And so we need those stories told more, because I think they are so important. Like, the fact that we haven't even heard of, like, Diary of a Slave Girl. The narrative, or I can't remember.
We're gonna get caught up. We should,
see, well corrected in the notes.
Don't jeopardy me on the podcast. Like, it's.
I know. I think her name was also Harriet, but I could be wrong. Narrative. Wait, I'm gonna look it up, y'all, because y'all watch me Google. I can't find it, but I will get back to it. But the fact that that hasn't even been made a story.
Yeah. How
she was able to survive and get her children their freedom. And how she literally survived under a floorboard for legit years.
I mean, and not to play this game here, because it's not a game, but, like, you know, Diary of Anne Frank, the girl who hid in the attic, is
a number one top seller.
I mean, you know, so it's like.
And I'm definitely not always in the oppression Olympics, because what we fighting is white supremacy, right?
Exactly.
That is always the biggest thing, as we see. And this actually goes into one of my questions, my next question, because we see Florida. We've also seen, before they passed the education law, they also banned Chinese Americans who also hold dual citizenship in the Republic of China from owning property.
Yeah.
We've also known that we have had concentration camps of Asian Americans in the United States, and that is not talked about enough as well.
And internment camps as well, like, just because, like, that is another very specific part of that whole system as well. Concentration. Well, no, it is both, because it is both. It is. Yeah, no, right. So I'm just throwing that in the mix too, just so but you're.
Yeah. So with these new laws and this book, and black folks starting to get within the system of really involving themselves in this free market, in capitalism, which is all a lie. Because if it were true, then we would have more equity.
The fact that we were just getting involved with it?
Yes. That we're just getting involved. And now we had this book.
The notion, rather, that we're just...
Yeah, the notion that we're just getting involved, this book. And now these new laws in Florida. And also, like, child labor laws now being passed. Now you could be 14 and not need a working permit in Arkansas, which is nuts. What is your whole thinking on that? And, like, what we need to... do you think it's just a direct affront to this work? I know that's a very loaded question, and I don't know if it's very clear and concise, but...
No, I mean, well, because I think that consistently the system is doing what it's designed to do, and it's working. You know, it is meant to adapt and alter and change in order to sustain the original idea of America.
Yeah.
So again, like, these things don't surprise me, and yeah, it is like a retaliatory act.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just to this one specific book or what have you, but, like, you know, Dr. Jones didn't do any favors for the other side. You know what I mean? She definitely created an obstacle for them to have to get over and push through, right? But the problem with that is that they can't admit that they built an obstacle course.
Yes.
Like, they created the Olympics of all of this. Like, they built a foundation that has cracks, does crumble, and you have to pivot and fix and jump and whatever other metaphor I'm mixing up here. But, like, you know, you have to go through, everybody has to go through all these hoops, even the creators. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you this is what it's meant to do. Mm-hmm. So as we do all of this, and they push back with things in Florida, we push back with literature. They push back with trying to support the wrong president candidates. Yeah. We push back. I mean, it's this constant tug of war versus an overall effort to, again, come together so that we can get on the same page about what's going on here. Because, but, like, nobody, like, again, pride, ego, history, lineage, all of this are things that people wear on their sleeves so heavily. So when we get to those conversations and we start to finger point and accuse, and you know, what some lieutenant the other day just is suing the city now because, I forget what city this is suing the city now because he didn't get a cop didn't get a promotion to lieutenant because he's white. That's why he's suing back on the city because of stuff like that, right?
That's crazy.
You know, I mean, so it's like we're in that place of, like, we're just wanting to fight and just hot. And
what I find the most interesting about 1619 when we're talking about all of this in that context is that if you really, 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 really read 1619 for comprehension, what this is a direct attack against white, rich men. That is literally the attack. And that, not the attack, but, like, the addressing. That America has only really benefited white, rich men. Landowners who were able to vote. Landowners. First, it was just owners. Then Charles Johnson, a black man, back then in Virginia, had land. And then they were like, well, we want your land. So therefore, we're going to switch this and say white male landowner. So that means people who did not own land, and most people did not own land, people who did not have money, which most people currently still do not have. It is very interesting when you read it, because the next question is, like, do people realize that when black people fight, it's for everyone? Because we've constantly been at the bottom rung of American society for so long. So if I'm getting rights, everybody gonna get rights, because that's the way this works. But I don't know if folks are fully comprehending that this is an affront, not to whiteness necessarily, but the ideals of white supremacy that people have baked into to achieve something. Yeah. So I guess the question is, like, that was my main takeaway. Was there any, like, super main takeaways you took that you're like, dang?
My number one takeaway I'll get into, but it was the structure of the book. But to go off of right now, you're continuing. It is like the global issue of colorism and the issues against blackness as well, because that resides within the black community as well as other communities, which is also an ideal of white supremacy. So when people who are of an oppressed community but not black also start to get into the not all lives matter rhetoric, but also why does your black life matter than mine as a non-black life? That's not the narrative. That's never been the narrative. I won't speak to Black Lives Matter organizations specifically because I know that they've been called up to the front every once in a while here and there for that and the other. But the statement still stands.
Yes.
It's a statement for our black lives here and today, because we at the root have been, blackness has been the oppressor to the actual oppressor. Like the oppressor proper has been, quote unquote, oppressed by blackness because of their own bullshit insecurities. So we had, we were kings and queens and even, honestly, even farmers and fishermen and warriors and all this
chefs,
crap. But because somebody threw a little temper tantrum because their toy was smaller than ours. Anyway. So my main takeaway from the book was, for me, it was the structure, because I did learn a lot of things, but at the same time, I think the way she did it was the thing that I walked away with this from, because the way she broke it down to, like, you pick up 1619 Project, you'd be like, oh, okay, I'm going to read about, the transatlantic slave trade, or I'm going to read about, I'm going to get more information on the Spaniards and Europe during that time period, and I'm going to get more information on all these things that we have that we have deficient knowledge on.
Right.
The way she broke it down to, like, what? You see, we're on a podcast, so I'm just going to read a couple of the title chapters, like the titles of the chapters. It's about 18 chapters, and the titles are Democracy, Race, Sugar, Fear, Dispossession, Capitalism, Politics, Citizenship, Self-Defense, which was that one, Punishment, Inheritance, Medicine, Church, Music, Healthcare, Traffic, Progress, and Justice. So this isn't just a workbook or or a textbook even. Like, it breaks down kind of like what we do here with the pod, which is why I love it. It's like we try to pick a specific theme or specific
she even talked about
subject
traffic
and break it down. And so it's like, this is a part. It shows how we're in the 4th century. We're working through the 4th century of this work that was set long ago. We're working through the 4th century of that mess, and it proves in the fact that, again, medicine, traffic, sugar, all these ways that she laid out. And so for me, that was a big takeaway. So gaining, naturally, I of course learned a lot more, but just the breakdown of it all, but the way it was so comprehensive, like day to day, like it felt like,
every single touch of your life is in fact touched by slavery / anti-blackness. From your roads you travel, traffic, all of that, your health care, how labor laws work in this country, because that's the biggest thing for me. As we just did Rest is Resistance, the question is, how has slave labor defined, like, labor in the United States, and how we view labor and how we pay for labor? And I think about that a lot.
And I'll tell you this, the disconnection for paying for labor,
that definitely is influenced by slavery,
and how labor
think about
is
right
the
now what we're
cause or
dealing
the blame with. Or the issue. You know what I mean? Because there's a history behind that. Like, your issues with labor, person who decided to start and build and be a part of this system, your issue with labor goes back to history, back to a time where people were supposed to just be working for free. And people were supposed to
That's why they didn't want the sharecroppers, like the black or white sharecroppers, getting together, because if they both put together their collective power, bye-bye. And
then if you had also built a system of false generosity, which again goes under this, in the birth of a nation, 1920, it goes under, like, you're supposed to have nothing because you are nothing.
Yes.
So if I give you something,
yes,
you should be grateful.
Yes.
Because you should have nothing.
Yes.
I am being generous by paying you above market rate or whatever, or whatever, or doing all these things.
He was a good slave owner. He gave us food.
You know what I mean?
He gave us clothes. He kept our families together.
You know what I mean? Oh, we always got bonuses. Yeah. Oh, we always got time off. Oh, we always got this. You know what I mean? Why do you think?
Why do you think?
Because you'll stay committed. You'll be incentivized to keep on shucking and jiving.
Mm-hmm. And that goes for everybody. And it's crazy how we've all baked into the system, and she's like dismantling in its entirety. I think we're in Baltimore, so when we're talking about segregation and also traffic, I would be remiss not to think about the highway to nowhere.
Oh yeah,
because we're not far from it. Mm-hmm. Now we'll also be remiss not to think about Long Island, New York, and Robert Moses and the bridges that he built, or even Atlanta. And the way, child.
Woo! Yeah.
Atlanta has the worst roads ever or traffic because of racism.
I was just talking to somebody about that the other day. Yeah.
Nothing makes sense because of racism. Mm-hmm. We are literally losing GDP because of racism. Mm-hmm. So when we're thinking about that and policies or transportation systems, what comes to your mind contributing to, you're from Richmond, so another one. What do you, when you think about segregation or how desegregation happens, and she touches on that a little bit, what are your thoughts surrounding that, like traffic, segregation, all these things that interconnect, and you don't even think about it in your daily life? When you read it, what did you think?
Well, that's hard because I kind of do think about it. Well, here's how I think about it often. I grew up in a sort of hood adjacent surrounding, right? Like, I didn't live in the projects, but people who had just as much right to live and walk the streets that I walked did live in the projects. And I remember the one day that somebody from over there broke into our house or whatever. So it's I remember being, again, adjacent to these types of things. At this time, I also remember downtown being a developing area. Mm-hmm. And specifically, in the Jackson Ward area, which if anybody knows that, it goes back to, it was once known as something like the southern hub for the Harlem Renaissance. Mm-hmm. There's just so much history that I want to go back into, and I'm constantly going back into. But anyway, my point is, this is why I'm kind of always thinking about it, because I haven't been home in a while, but even from up until before I moved away, so from my birth to 22, so much development had happened there. People who, the homeless population had gone up. People had lost, people were thrown out of homes and housing, affordable housing, shoved into areas that were quote unquote affordable housing, but were also poorly managed and so forth. It's so commercialized now, places that used to be simple, around here in Baltimore, mom and pop, you can, put down your credit for just so you can feed your family or what have you. That's now a coffee shop or, things like that. It's getting harder and harder for, here in Baltimore, food deserts. It's getting harder and harder to access places where you can just get proper nutrition at a reasonable price without having to take two, three buses, all that stuff. So it is, all of this for me, when I think about it, it really does show how commercialization and an effort to bring in, and it's hard because I'm not a land developer, I'm not a property owner, I'm not any of these things, but I am somebody who has grown up in a very specific place, and now I hardly recognize that place. I am one of those people. So I know that y'all, a lot of people out here, people with money who are buying and doing all these things, I know y'all don't care about that stuff because you were dying to get out of your spaces anyway. And you also, or you remember your places and spaces despite your pill popping parents or your drunk sexual abusing uncles, y'all remember the fantasy of where you grew up and feel like you can replicate it everywhere else. And guess what? You do. Those issues that I just threw out right there happen there once you make that same replica. And that's why we're all just pushing on and doing and creating and building whatever for a world that creates a fantasy for somebody who is also very much not healed. So that's where, for me, when I think about, like, traffic for me, especially as like a pedestrian, traffic for me is not, that's how I see it. Like, that's how that section of it is like, I see how the area around these beeping, honking, frustrated cars is a vehicle, quite literally, for a larger frustration and a larger issue that is seen as a healing and seen as a way of fixing. And it's not. It's creating more issues.
I think that leads me to, that makes me think about neighborhoods in safety and grass for children to play. And I think about that often and frequently when you're talking about poorly managed units or whatever may have you. You know, we all need to have pride in wherever we live, but it's hard to have pride if someone's not treating you with pride. So it's tough. Like, you work all hard all day long, and then you come home and you ask for a light bulb to be fixed because that's what you are literally paying your rent for, and they don't do it. Or something's broken and they let it broke because they feel as though like you don't care. And it's like you have to be the change you see. You only see what you know. And so I always have sympathy and empathy, really empathy more than sympathy. Empathy because of course you want to go outside and play. Of course you want to hang out. Like recently we saw one of the pools was closed and the kids were playing in it because they had nowhere else to go. And it's like, that's sad. There should be recreational centers or whatever may have you, but the thing is we have to deem that being important, but also it probably shoves into this capitalist system of whatever they want to do, especially when we think about prisons and private prisons and all of that stuff, which she definitely touched in the book. But I know we're running up on time. And so I wanted to, for my final question is, let's say one of our listeners is trying to, because we all got family or friends or adjacent folks that you just like want to like get this in their head and like stop it. And I know people feel as though like, I don't gotta convince them, like if they ain't about it, I ain't about it. But like, I think that drives us further away from each other and doesn't get us back to listening. Because I just want to know, your points are wrong, you know, but I will listen to your points because your points have probably directly are in fact trying to kill me, your policies or your thoughts. What would you give as someone who is trying to convince someone in their orbit to give this a shot to read? Like, who is just like, nah.
I mean, the thing is, it's like the prerequisite, I feel like, for doing the work that would be required of you after you read the book is for you to just stop lying to yourself. And therefore lying to other people. Because I realize that, again, who this book is meant for: white men with money, property, land, access. Hello. To all of that. First off, don't act like you don't have access.
Yes.
First off, I don't care what your tax bracket is. You do not act like you don't have access. You do.
Yeah, that's true.
So then, I mean, and again, this is why I say, because there are just so many nuanced lies that have enveloped in the comfiest snuggie for these people. You need to withstand a couple of cold winters. Have you ever done, like, I'll never forget that time my mama almost went up on me. I didn't tell her she went away for a concert. The oil went out on the date that she went out, left. So I was up in that cold wintry house for like 3. I didn't tell my mama. Because I knew the money wasn't quite. I mean, she was working.
But she said that ain't your responsibility because you a child.
Okay, I didn't bring all this up for you to replicate. I'm just saying.
I know, mama.
But no, she was not happy. I did that for sure. But my point is, it's like, it's like I decided to like go through that for whatever teenaged reason, and I feel like as a metaphor, so many people who this book was meant for need to go through that moment, even if you feel like you have. Because I promise you, you haven't quite. And I don't know if you can, because, I mean, you can't wear this skin, you can't walk this life, you can't do that. But at the same time, hopefully you'll stop doing things that you feel like are better but are actually massively detrimental and part of the problem, and then simultaneously stop telling yourself that it is not a part of the problem and that you're actually fixing things.
Yeah, that's real.
And that's what I would say to anybody who's on the fence about reading this book.
Yeah. I think for me, if I was trying to convince someone, I would ask them why. And they're like, oh, I don't want to get that left-wing propaganda. Because I'm sure that's what they'll say. It's more so like, this is a history lesson, whether you take it or not. You know, she is a learned woman. She has gotten all the accolades that are achievable, honestly, in like American academia. And she has the experience to speak on this topic. Now, if they're saying, like, if the question is they don't want to feel bad at the end of reading it, you know, only hit dogs holla. So, but I know some folks can't say that to their friends. But what I will say is this is not an affront to you. Do you have access? Do you have money? Now, if the question is, yes, you have those things. When you have a mindset of abundance, you don't have to worry about scarcity. Because there's enough in this world, honestly, in the American rich 1% world, to give to everyone. For our veterans not to be homeless and to have mental health care that they need. For our homeless people never to be of existence in American culture. This is ridiculous. This is literally to address those issues. And that's okay. To actually put a mirror up to the wealth of this country and how a lot of people are still using Clarion and Afterpay just to pay for groceries. That's not okay.
That's not okay.
And this is a direct affront and a explanation of how did we get here. That's all it is. How did we get here? And if you don't like it, then okay. At least you read it and you listen to different points of view. But closing your mind up to only your bubble is not helpful. And it does not lend itself to a fruitful country. So, you know,
turn the egos down.
Yeah, I think a lot of people need to just turn the egos down, and also this righteousness.
Yeah.
Because you are not God.
I saw a play the other day that where this white guy, he was like the woke friend, like that was his title. And then all of a sudden, and he was saying all these things. Anybody would say something, he'd be like, oh, well, actually, you know. And so he was also like kind of this mansplaining type whatever situation. And then by the end of it, he kind of cracked and crumbled all these stereotypical black linguistics and actions and so forth. And it was such a phenomenally strong moment because it was the representation of the facade that they live, that a lot of people work from and present. And then it took it back to the root of the problem, whether you present that way or act that way or not. It just bubbled up out of this person subconsciously, and then it shocked the hell out of them too. And they were like, whoa, I didn't, So allow yourself to have that shock. You can't be in that place. Take your ego down a bit and see what comes up and see where it takes you or whatever, rather than thinking, oh, I've done this and I've done that, so I have the answer. Here it is. Yeah,
because you can always be an ally in this space, but like a lived experience is a lived experience.
A lived experience is a lived experience. And if you haven't lived the experience in any way, shape, or form, why are you here?
Nope. Just be an ally. We call you when you need. That's what I do when I'm in different places and spaces that I know I can only provide allyship.
What's the problem with just not speaking?
Yeah, I can just take a step back, even when we're talking about black men and how they feel. I can't tell no black man how he feels going around this country. I can only speak to myself as a black woman. I can also not speak to the queer experience. I cannot also speak to other experiences. I am a cisgender black woman. Those are the mantles that I carry.
Oh, and you know all that stuff about with Just Hilarious and T.S. Madison. Have you seen?
We're not gonna do that.
We're not gonna do that. We gotta wrap all this up.
Okay, so we have to end.
Yeah. Thank y'all so much for tuning in yet again for another fantastic episode of But Make It Books, a podcast where we're bookishly healing through life. Anything?
Stay tuned. There's an event happening soon.
Yeah, there's an event happening in October. Hit us in our DMs if you were interested in helping sponsorship. That we have more information coming. We should talk about that. Actually, but yeah, so we're gonna go on with our day, and we hope that you all go on and continue to live your life, but make it bookish. Thank y'all.
Peace, y'all.
Hey y'all, it's Niccara. Thank you so much for listening to the episode. If you like it, please make sure you review, rate, and subscribe to our podcast. Of course, sharing is caring, so make sure you share with your friends and let everyone know to come into Charm City Books to get our recommendations. And thank you so much for listening again, and I'll see y'all. Be good.